Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's writing live lesson. My name is Mrs. Collum, and I will be your teacher for today's lesson. So today we're going to have probably a little bit of a shorter lesson. We are just going over transition words. Now, if you've been joining me for all these lessons, you know that we are done learning all the parts of an essay. Now, we're still going to be practicing it, but today is just going to be concentrating on those transition words. But I have taught you how to plan for the essay, how to write the introduction, each of your middle paragraphs, your R1, R2, R3, and your conclusion. Okay, so I want to screen share and show you a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to do a quick review. We wrote a whole essay the other day, okay? So I want you to think, like, how did it feel? What part felt the easiest and what part felt the hardest? Because we've been learning this now for 4 weeks. We've gone over all the pieces of an essay. So that's a big accomplishment, something you may have thought you couldn't do, and now you've been able to do it. So take some time to think about that. And for today, we're going to be talking about transition words. So as you know, we've been writing an essay, and every time we go to use a transition word, we always use a very basic one like first, second, and third. And I kept telling you, we're just going to keep it basic right now. And then later we will learn how to replace our transition words with more advanced and fancier ones. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So instead of using first, second, and third, we're now going to use more advanced transition words. Okay, so I'm going to show you this practice. I'm going to get out my list because I want you guys to be able to see this up close. So this is a transition word list that I made. Let me share my screen so you can see it bigger. And I want you to take a look at this real quick. So you can see here, these are words that you can say instead of first. So these would be our R1 words. These are words that you can say instead of second. These would be our R2 words. These are words you can say instead of third. These are our R3 words. And then here are some transition words you can start for your conclusion paragraph. So remember, we've been writing essays, and I have some of them in my writing folder that we've been working on. So I just want to remind you, I want to show you one of them that we were working on last week. So you can see here, every time we went to start a paragraph, we just used first, second, and third. Those are our transition words. It's every time you start one of your middle paragraphs and your conclusion. Okay, we always use first, second, and third. Here's another one. First, second, third. And we didn't use any for our conclusion yet. So this is what we've been doing with all the essays we've been writing. Let me show you one more. Here's another one we did on basketball. First, second, third. So we've been using these basic transitions. Now, you don't want to actually use first, second, and third forever, especially as you become better and better at writing. You want to start using more advanced transition words. This is what this list is. So instead of saying first, you can use to begin with or to start off. And instead of using second, you can say furthermore or another reason why. And instead of saying third, you can say last but not least or furthermore or any of these. And then for your conclusion, you can start with one of these because that'll help transition into your conclusion. The only paragraph you don't use a transition word is your introduction, but all the other ones, your middles and your conclusions, can all have a transition word. So let me show you an example of an essay about favorite animal. Okay, take a look here. And you can see every time I started a paragraph, I used a transition word, and I didn't use first, second, and third. Okay, so take a look at this. Remember, This right here is my I paragraph. Where the green is. Okay, I'm going to make a little note. That's my I paragraph. This right here is my R1 paragraph. Push that back. Okay. This right here is my R2 paragraph. This right there is my R3 paragraph. And then this down here is my C paragraph. So I have all 5 paragraphs, but I want you to notice that every time, except my introduction, every time I started a paragraph, I use a transition word. Okay, so take a look at that for a minute. Look at each transition word. See all the transition words? I want you to look at those, and then I want you to look at the list right next to it so you can see the ones that I chose. Go ahead and look at those for a minute. So instead of using first right here, I use to begin with. That's the one I chose. Instead of saying second right here, I use in addition. Instead of saying third right here, I used last but not least. And then to start my conclusion, I said to wrap it all up. So those are the ones I chose. I could have chose any of them. I want you to notice something. Every time I start a paragraph, I indent. And then on those middle paragraphs in conclusion, I put a transition word and then a comma. You can see I have to begin with, comma. In addition, comma. Last but not least, comma. To wrap it all up, comma. Okay, you always indent and put your transition word, comma. And then we write our topic sentence. The transition word is the beginning of our topic sentence. Here's our transition word, and then topic sentence. Transition word, topic sentence. Transition word, topic sentence. Okay, all right, now, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take a piece of paper. Okay, we're gonna do a little activity here. I'm gonna get myself a blank piece of paper. If you have an index card, even better. But if not, just get a blank piece of paper. That's totally fine. Right, blank piece of paper. And I want you to write my transition word list. And I want you to write R1, R2, R3, and C. And then I want you to put 2 lines next to each one. Let me share what I was just writing so you can see it. Like this. Let me take a couple minutes and write that real quick. Okay, hopefully you have that written down now. So now that you have this, this is what I want you to do. I want you to pick your top 2 that you like. Your top 2 transition words that you like best. So let me show you an example. For R1, and don't copy mine, I'm just picking mine, but for R1, I'm going to choose to kick off. I like that one. To kick off. And then I like first and foremost. Okay, those are my 2. Now I want you to pick your favorite 2 for R1, your favorite 2 for R2, your favorite 2 for R3, and then your favorite 2 for C. So go ahead and work on that. I'll give you about 3 or 4 minutes and then we'll come back. So make sure you fill out, just pick 2 that you like from R1, put it here. You can see I chose, I'll put a little asterisk. I chose these 2. That's why I wrote them there. You choose your 2 and then choose 2 from here, 2 from here, and 2 from here, and write them on your transition word list. Okay, go ahead and work on that for me. Okay, I'm going to finish working on my part while you're finishing yours. Okay, so there's no right or wrong answer. We can all choose what we want. I like to do this because sometimes having a list is a little overwhelming. You don't know which one to pick. So I always narrow it down to my top 2. And then what happens is when I'm writing an essay, and let's just pretend for time's sake, I already have the essay written, but I left the transition words off. Okay, if I was working on this essay, I would have my list next to me. And I would be able to pick quickly which transition words I'd want to use for each paragraph. So I know that this is my I paragraph, so I don't need a transition word. This is my R1. So for R1, I've already indented. I'm going to come over to my list and I'm going to say, you know what? I think I'm going to use first and foremost. I'm either going to use to kick it off or first and foremost. Okay. First and foremost, and there's a comma there already. And then when I go to my R2, which is here, I'm going to choose secondly. I can use secondly or furthermore. So I'm going to do secondly. There's a comma there already. All right. And then for my R3, let's go over to my list. I can use last but not least or the last reason. I think I'm going to use the last reason. And then for my conclusion, I'm going to say to sum it all up. All right. And so it just helps you narrow down what transition words that you want to use. All right. So last thing that I'm going to have you work on is I already wrote the essay. You don't need to rewrite the essay, but if you have a piece of paper, why don't we just do this? Why don't you put R1 and then a line, R2 and then a line, R3 in line, and C, because you're going to be filling in these blanks. But since you don't have the paper, I'm going to just have you do it real quick on your own piece of paper. Okay, so here's the essay. I've written the essay. You're just going to pick transition words. Pick them off your list. Okay, so I want you to pick a transition word for the R1 that will go here, the R2 that will go here, the R3 that will go here, and then C that will go here. Okay, so take about 2 minutes and choose which transition words from your list. Okay. So because you don't have this paper, this is your R1. I'm just going to put it on a line here that says R1. This is your R2, R3, and conclusion. Okay, so for R1, this time I'm going to pick to kick it off. Whatever you picked, you could write on your line. Just make sure you always put a comma after so you don't forget. For my R2, this time I'm going to pick furthermore. So comma there. Remember, you're writing yours on the piece of paper. For R3, this time I'm going to pick last but not least. And for my conclusion, this time I'm going to pick as a review. Okay, so here is the transition word list. Also, too, you can Google and come up with your own list. So if you have time later today, I would take your writing notebook and I would Google transition words for first, transition words for second, transition words for third, and you can make your own list of like 10 or 15 for each one, and then you have a lot to choose from. But remember that every time you start a paragraph, okay, every time you start a paragraph except your introduction, all your middle paragraphs and your conclusion, you always indent and start with a transition word. And instead of using first, second, and third, I want you to try to use these more advanced transition words and for conclusion. Okay, so take notes, Google your own transition words, keep your transition word list, because like I said, sometimes having to pick from 10 different ones is confusing, but if you narrow it down to your top 2, you always know to pick one of these. And you can change them, but it's just nice to have your own little list. Okay, all right. I will see you all at the next lesson, and we will continue working on the essay and now working with our new advanced transition words. Have a good day, everyone.